The 2025 ERP Awards, IT is having its best year since 1996, and how your ERP system is making you weaker as an organization. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 255 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026 and welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 255. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy aspects of digital transformations. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. Joining me as always is Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today's episode.
I'm excited too. This is going to be a great one. This is sort of a good recap of 2025 as well as looking forward into 2026. We're going to cover a lot of different things here today, including some social media questions we've received online. We're going to get into some of those questions and answer those for you. And then we're going to bring on Greg Benton later in the show. Well, actually, before we bring on Greg, we're going to talk about a couple newsworthy topics. One is how IT is having its best year since 1996. We'll talk about how and why that is. And then we'll also talk about Microsoft Rust and why the headline is misleading. And then later in the show, we will chat with Greg Benton. He'll be on the show. He's a chief strategy officer here at Third Stage Consulting. We are going to host the 2025 annual ERP Awards show, if you will. So we're going to go through probably 20 or 25 different categories and show you who the winners are and the runners up for each of these categories. It's going to be a great conversation. It's a good way to recognize some of the great work that software vendors are doing in the space, as well as hopefully to provide some good differentiation between what some of the strengths and weaknesses are of these different software vendors out in the marketplace. And then after Greg is on and we submit those awards to the different software vendors, we will also talk later about your ERP system and how it's probably making you weaker. And we're going to actually do that in the context of Michael Porter's 5 forces model. If any of you have studied business in school or gotten your MBA at any point in the past or future or past or present, you may recognize something called the Michael Porter 5 forces model. We're going to talk about how that industry forces model favors software vendors, but at the expense of ERP customers in many cases. So we're going to dive into that and analyze what it means to you as an organization and how you can shift that playing field back to your favor as a result of that model. So before we get to all of our great guests and topics here today, what about social media? Darian, we've gotten some good questions there recently. What have you got for us?
Yeah, we have a lot of good questions today. The first one being, can you take full advantage of SAP BTP with SAP ECC? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't believe you can. I believe BTP is only for S4HANA, or at least that's the only place I'm seeing our clients use it is in the S4HANA environment. And for those that don't know, BTP is the business technology platform, is what it stands for SAP. And it's really their way of not only configuring and integrating different modules of S4HANA, but also integrating to other products that are owned by SAP, such as Ariba, Concur, SuccessFactors, et cetera. And I believe it also helps you integrate to other third parties outside the SAP ecosystem as well.
Yeah, you made some great points there, Eric, for sure. But I want to get into our next question, which is, the real question is, how do we elevate awareness of these reoccurring risks before a project begins, when expectations and guardrails can still be shaped?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's why, phase zero is so important. If you can create a phase zero plan and put some quality assurance in place and ensure that you've got the right assessment in place and the right guardrails, to use the question's terminology here. If you can elevate awareness of the risk and identify the risk by establishing a phase zero implementation plan, but also putting in place a quality assurance framework to where you're looking at the different risks and identifying and anticipating the risks before they become too damaging to the project and to the organization. So those are the main ways you go about it. Is you want to address that during phase zero, get the governance in place, and also get the quality assurance framework in place so that you have a way of identifying risks along the way. And one of the biggest things that I always use as a litmus test to see if you're being realistic about your risk mitigation strategies is if you have a risk log that's empty or is very short in terms of identifying potential risk, that probably means you haven't identified the risk, because every one of these projects is going to have pretty significant risk and it's going to be extensive. So you want to make sure that you've identified them as early as possible so that you can have a deliberate strategy to address those risks rather than just waiting for the collateral damage to take hold.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, Eric. But I want to switch gears here and get into our first newsworthy article of the day. It's about Microsoft Rust and why that headline is misleading. So, quick take, despite the buzz, Microsoft is not rewriting Windows in Rust. They're using Rust selectively in new or high-risk components, not ripping out decades of C/C++ code. That's not a reset, it's controlled incremental modernization. Why this matters is because full rewrites can really just be a fantasy at scale. Security problems aren't solved by switching languages. Mature platforms just need to evolve, and this mirrors how ERP, cloud, and AI actually change in the real world. The bigger takeaway with this article, they said, is the story exposes how much the industry loves a clean reset narrative because they sound decisive. But the smartest organizations manage risks through containment, refactoring, and boundaries, not big bang reinvention. So with all this, Eric, I want to ask a couple different questions. One being, why do executives and vendors keep chasing rewrite narratives?
Well, I think chasing a rewrite narrative is more decisive, as you mentioned, but it's also perceived to be more forward thinking and more dramatic and more of a must have. If you're just doing incremental changes as a software vendor, it's not nearly as sexy as a complete new product or whatever the case may be. So I think that's the big thing that we're seeing is the fact that so many organizations just perceive it to be more of a positive thing when they have these rewrite or complete overhaul narratives.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. But is rewrite more just a attractive way to sell risk?
I don't know if it's a more attractive way to sell risk. I think it is riskier for sure, because when you rewrite or recreate a product and it's a complete overhaul, it is more of a jump or more of a change for users and organizations to get used to. So there is inherent risk there, but I think to your point, the part about rewriting a product or overhauling a product is that it creates this shiny object syndrome where we get excited and enamored by the product. And so we think it's going to be something really cool or something dramatically better than what we have. And so that causes us to oftentimes downplay the risks or not recognize how big those risks are.
That's a great point. And I guess my question is, how does this compare to ERP clean core and replatforming promises?
Well, clean core is a really interesting concept. It's something we're going to come back to actually in our awards show. We're going to talk about some trends and buzzwords as part of that show, or as part of that award ceremony that we do here in just a moment. But we talk about buzzwords toward the end of the awards and talk about some of the biggest buzzwords. And clean core is one we're going to talk about. And yeah, clean core is something that sounds good in theory, because when you've got a replatform or a complete overhaul of a product, the best way to adopt that from a technical perspective is to throw away your old legacy customization and potentially even the data and workflows behind it and start over with a clean core. And if I'm a technical architect or a developer or an IT manager, that's probably what I'm going to want, because I'd rather see the business get rid of some of that customization and what people would often call technical debt. I'd rather see the business get rid of that stuff in the name of making my job easier as an IT professional. But the problem is that the IT professional and their priorities and what they value in their jobs is oftentimes in direct conflict with what the business needs are. And so, in other words, if I'm a business owner or a business process owner, there's certain ways I'm going to want my business to operate, regardless of how technology can or can't support that. And I'm not going to want to be constrained by technology. I don't want technology to dictate to me as a business owner how I can or can't run my business. I hope technology will give me more capabilities, more options. But the last thing I want is it to constrain my ability to do what it is I think I need to do. Now, the technical architect in me, the technologist in me is going to say, I don't really care about how your business is different. I think you should just conform to the technology because the technology works. It's technologically sound. It's going to be easier to integrate. It's going to be easier to upgrade the system when that time comes. If we don't customize and we start with a clean core. So there's a lot of similarities here, and there's a lot of merit or perceived merit behind clean core. But as is the case with replatforming and rewrites of platforms and overhauls, they can create a lot of problems and risks that don't get recognized.
Yeah, that makes sense. And last question here today with this article, when does incremental modernization outperform transformation programs?
Well, a lot of this lines up with, or should line up with, your culture and strategy as an organization. If you're a super aggressive risk tolerance organization, it might be that a true transformation is going to make a lot of sense. You might have a clear ROI, a clear jump or quantum leap you're trying to make in your performance as an organization. In those cases, a broader, bigger transformation might make more sense. If you're risk adverse and the technology you have is good enough, it's worked good enough for you the last few years, and you don't have a high risk tolerance and you have a lot to lose, maybe there's not a clear ROI on a big, massive transformation program, then a more incremental program is probably going to outperform in your case. So it's really a matter, I don't want to say one is always better or worse than the other, but you do want to make sure that it fits who you are as an organization and what you're trying to accomplish. And it should all ultimately come back to ROI and business benefits. If you can't justify the business benefits of a big, massive transformational program, then think about maybe a more incremental, lower risk, lower cost type of solution or option or strategy that might actually deliver you a better ROI, especially a risk adjusted ROI. If you can minimize your risk, even if you don't get quite as much ROI as you possibly could with a big transformation program, it might be that cost and risk profile is much more attractive to you to do a more incremental approach. And we see a lot of clients, especially in the mid-market, that are more risk adverse and they're more interested in the incremental approach rather than the big transformational programs.
Yeah, a lot of super interesting points there, but I want to switch gears and get into our next newsworthy article, which is about how IT has had its best year since 1996, thanks to AI. So what this article says is, according to the CIO, the IT sector just had its strongest growth year since 1996, largely driven by AI-related spending, infrastructure investment, and renewed confidence in technology as a growth engine. But the key point isn't AI hype. It's where the money is actually going. What's really happening is AI is pulling forward long-delayed IT investments. Spending is concentrated on infrastructure, data platforms, security, and core systems. Companies aren't just experimenting anymore, they're operationalizing. And lastly, IT is being repositioned as strategic infrastructure, not discretionary spend. In other words, AI didn't magically fix IT. AI forced leadership teams to finally fund what they've been underinvested in for years. The bigger takeaway here isn't that it's not an AI boom, it's an IT reckoning. AI is exposing which organizations are structurally ready for the future and which ones aren't. Eric, I do have some follow-up questions for you on this article. First one being, is AI the real growth driver or just justification for overdue IT spend?
Well, that's a good question. I do think that AI is a real growth driver, but I think it's also exposing a lot of things that organizations should have been spending money on in the past. So things like data governance and data management in general, data quality, that's been something that's been neglected for years. And when analytics and business intelligence started to emerge as core technologies, a couple decades ago, or call it a decade ago, a lot of organizations started to realize like our data kind of sucks and we need to clean it up and we need to make it better if we want to take advantage of these capabilities. but it was somewhat isolated. You could still run your ERP system, you can still run your operations without necessarily cleaning up your data. Now, I'd argue that you can't do it nearly as well as if you have clean data, but in many cases, the organizations were operating, without cleaning up that data. But now with AI being so prominent in enterprise technologies, and eventually knowing that AI will soon become prominent within a lot of organizations, it'll become presumably a key part of our day-to-day workflows within most organizations. We're going to have clean data. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so I think it is somewhat of a reckoning, and we're playing catch up now on stuff we probably should have cleaned up and fixed a long time ago. So I suppose the good news here is it's better late than never. At least organizations are finally recognizing that they just simply can't operate in an AI-driven environment without clean data and without proper data governance and without people understanding how their actions and behaviors and workflows affect other people throughout the organization. So I think that's all very relevant stuff that needs to be considered. And that's where I think we're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But are companies investing strategically, or are they reaching out of fear of being left behind?
That's a really good question. I think most organizations are probably acting more reactively in this. I think what's happening is organizations are realizing AI is here. It's real. It's catching on fast. It's catching on like a wildfire. Software vendors are investing heavily in it. We're not going to be able to avoid it even if we wanted to. So I think a lot of organizations are saying, well, we better catch up or we better keep up. So that's okay, I suppose. But the problem that's creating is it's creating a situation where a lot of organizations aren't being deliberate or strategic around their AI initiatives, around their technology initiatives in general. And this has been something that's been a problem for decades. Well before AI, organizations have struggled with, finding that right strategy and defining a proper strategy for their organizations going forward. So I think it's a bit of both, but I think right now there are too many organizations that are reacting and playing catch up rather than being deliberate about their AI strategies.
You made a great point there. Last question I have for this article: how much of this IT growth is sustainable versus front-loaded panic spending?
It does feel a lot like the late 90s when I started my career. I started my career in 97, 98, in that era, right when the Y2K bubble was going up, on the up and up. Companies were panicked because they thought Y2K was going to crash all the computers in the world, and they had no choice but to upgrade to modern ERP systems. Turns out that might have been a farce, might have been a false assumption, because I don't recall a single instance of any sort of computer disruption anywhere in the world. So that tells me that means that either 100% of organizations throughout the world were able to upgrade by Y2K, which is probably not true and probably not possible, or B, the software industry perpetuated this false fear that didn't really exist. So I think that might be a bit of where we are now. I think AI is an extension of the cloud panic, if we want to call it that. The panic was started when all the on-premise vendors started talking about how on-premise is dead. They're going to stop supporting the software that's on-premise, and you're going to have to move to the cloud whether you like it or not. Now you add AI to the mix, and a lot of vendors are saying, okay, AI is real, but guess what? We're only putting AI in our cloud systems. We're not going to develop it for on-premise. So that's creating a lot of panic and a false sense of urgency that a lot of customers are falling prey to. And I think, again, just like any big capital spending decision, whether it's technology or anything else, you just need to make sure you're doing it on your timeline, that you can justify it. You can't have a vendor telling you that you have to do something, that's going to cost millions or tens of millions of dollars to implement if it doesn't make sense and you don't have the business value. If you don't have a business case for it, then don't do it. If you end up on premise without support, that's a risk, but you have to assess that risk against the risk of a big disruption or spending money on a massive cloud transformation that you may or may not be able to afford.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, some great articles and questions today, but I'm super excited to get into our conversation today.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks for those great questions. And we've got a lot to cover here in the remainder of this episode. In fact, we're just getting started. We're going to bring Greg Benton on here in just a moment. We're going to do our first annual 2025 ERP Awards show. We've got about 20 plus different categories. We're going to have winners and runners up for different categories of enterprise tech and ERP systems. So be sure to stick around. We're going to give our objective view of where we think the vendors are the strongest, and we're going to recognize some of the leading software vendors in the space during the segment. And then later in the show, we're going to talk about how the industry forces of the ERP software space are actually tilting the playing field to the advantage of software vendors and at the expense of their customers. We're going to talk about how that dynamic is playing out, and we're going to use a model called Michael Porter's 5 Forces model. And we're going to analyze the ERP software industry and talk about how it's affecting ERP vendors in a positive way and how it's actually diminishing or diluting the industry strength or the overall leverage that customers have. So we're going to dive into that in quite a bit of detail here later in the show. So we've got a lot more to cover. Be sure to stick around. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or a free guide that we publish. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
Wake me up inside. I can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 255. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. This show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you in your digital transformation journey, whether it's helping you define a strategy and roadmap or select the right technology or plan for an implementation or actually execute the implementation and change management behind it, be sure to reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss your project with you and how we might be able to help. We're excited for this next segment. We've assembled our first annual ERP awards, and we thought it'd be kind of fun as a year and new start to the year sort of dynamic here where we recognize software vendors and their strengths in different areas and different categories. So we're going to dive into this. And just as a disclaimer, we are not affiliated with any of the software vendors we talk about here today or any software vendors in the market at all across the board. So this is our objective tech agnostic view of the different strengths and weaknesses of these different software vendors. You can also be sure to download our annual digital transformation report. We just published it at the end of 2025. We published our 2026 ERP report, where we talk about a lot of these software vendors we're about to talk about in this award show, but we also talk about trends and things that we're seeing in the industry and things that you should be aware of as an IT leader, as a business leader that's going through potential change and transformation. So be sure to check that out. You can scan the QR code on the screen in front of you, or I've included links to that transformation report below. So with that all being said, let's jump into the ERP Awards show with Greg Benton, the Chief Strategy Officer here at Third Stage Consulting.
I've been with Third Stage for roughly 5 years, and that comes from 30 years of a career history of working with our clients on software strategy, selection, ERP implementations. I tend to be a lot more technical in terms of the deployment, but my responsibility here at Third Stage is to make sure that all of our clients find that our services are delivered in the most outstanding way. And that's why I'm really excited to join you here, Eric, today on the awards ceremony for the vendors.
Yeah.
This is going to be very good. So,
Yeah.
my favorite categories.
Yeah, this would be fun. We've never done anything like this. I know we do our top 10 lists. We do our independent reviews, our pros and cons of different systems. We help clients select and evaluate all these different systems every day. And sometimes it can get overwhelming just trying to understand and navigate all the different options in the marketplace. But just to give you a preview of what we've got in store for you today, we've got a number of different categories we're going to cover here today. We've actually have official award cards, courtesy of our marketing team, which put together these really cool award cards. The only thing we're missing is the tuxedos and like the big auditorium on live TV, like at the Grammys or the Oscars or the traditional award shows. That's the only thing that's missing, but we'll work our way up to that someday. So one thing I was going to say though, is for those of you in the audience, those of you watching today, we're streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Thank you for joining today, wherever you are. We're going to share with you some of these different categories. We have a winner for each category and we have a runner up for each category. But I'd love to hear the audience feedback as we go here. We're going to be going back and forth between what we have prepared for you on the different award categories. But I also would love to hear feedback from the audience. If you've got feedback on any of these vendors, any of these categories, anything you think we missed, anything along those lines, we'd love to hear your feedback. And if you don't mind, just dropping in the chat what city and country you're joining from today. I'd love to hear where you're joining from today. I imagine this is going to stimulate a lot of conversation here today, just because anytime we talk about pros and cons and comparisons of different software solutions, we always get a lot of feedback there. So I'd love to hear your feedback here in the audience. Speaking of the audience, we're already getting some comments coming in. Faye on YouTube says that they're blessed, or Fayo on YouTube says, I'm blessed. Thank you for being here. And I'm glad you're having a positive end to the year and hopefully a good start to 2026. Paolav on YouTube is from Thailand, says, hello, Eric. Also asking, how do we learn ERP systems? Hopefully today in this conversation is a good way to start to learn some different pros and cons and understandings of different systems in the marketplace. And then Sally on YouTube is joining from Cape Town, South Africa, and says, thank you for all your contributions, YouTube videos for 2025. Absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. And I hope you enjoy the videos, and we'll do more of them in 2026 since you like them. Good morning from Darian. Thanks for being here today, Darian. And then Mahad on YouTube says is from Alexandria, Egypt. So people from all over joining already here today. So love to get your global perspectives as we get going here. Before we jump into the categories, I want to share with you all something on my screen here. And this is really just a way to set the context. We're not going to dive into this in a great amount of detail, but we do a number of different top 10 lists on my YouTube channel and some of the content that we publish. In fact, we have our 2026 digital transformation report that just was published just last week, actually. And it contains our top 10 rankings of the top 10 ERP systems in the marketplace. Very broad, general ranking across industries, across company sizes, across geographies. So very big picture, very high level. Today, we're obviously going to go a lot deeper into specific categories and specific areas that different ERP systems can be compared. But I still want to share with you this top 10 list. And this is a list that we put together and published recently. And what we did is we said, instead of looking at just ERP systems, even though this is called the top 10 ERP systems for 2026, even though this award show is called the ERP Awards, the word ERP is becoming very blurred. It's a very gray area now as far as what exactly is ERP. Is it a true traditional monolithic ERP system, or does it entail AI? Does it entail business analytics and business intelligence and integration and composable ERP? And our answer and our response to that is most likely all of the above. There's a lot of different options in the marketplace available. So companies have a lot of choices to choose from that they hadn't had in the past. And this is our ranking for 2026 of what we see in the marketplace as far as some of the leading software vendors. And you can see right off the bat, number 1, 2, and 3, and 4 actually are not your traditional ERP vendors. Snowflake, Palantir, Salesforce, ServiceNow. A lot of you on the call here today would say those are not ERP systems. And in some cases, you're right, they are not ERP systems. But if you look at the broader enterprise technology category and business systems in general, they are systems that have great strengths. And of course, your traditional ERP systems like Microsoft E365, Oracle NetSuite Infor, SAP Odoo. Oracle Fusion is one that a lot would say should be in the top 10 list. You can make a very strong argument for this. You could make a very strong argument that none of these 10 should be in the top 10, and we should have an entirely different top 10 list. And so top 10 lists are a good place to start, a conversation, but rarely is it going to be the end all be all, which is why we thought we'd dive into it in a bit more detail by getting into some of these different categories that we're going to talk about here today. So I'd love to hear your feedback. What's your knee-jerk reaction to this top 10 list? I'm not going to dive into it in a lot of detail, but I'd love to hear, if you have a strong reaction to something you like or don't like about this list, I'd love to hear it. These conversations are always engaging, and we do not have all the answers, even though we're putting together the show in our top 10 list. We do not have all the answers, and many of you are going to have different opinions on that. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. And then I want to say hello to Eduardo from Barcelona, Spain, and then Infrared L joining on YouTube from Dallas. So we have a very strong showing on YouTube here today. So thank you for joining wherever you are here today. So that's our top 10 list. What do you think? I'd love to hear your feedback on that, based on that initial thought or that initial ranking there. But what I want to do is get into our first award category. And this category is the most AI-driven platform. First of all, AI is probably the biggest buzzword of 2025. If we had to nominate a term that's most used for the enterprise tech space, it's probably AI. In fact, the software that we use to do our podcast every week, it created this compilation video of saying what is the number one word you used in your podcast in 2025, and it created this montage of clips of me saying AI over and over and over again. It was actually kind of funny. I don't think it meant to be funny, but it was like a 30-second video, and I say AI like 600 times in that 30-second video. So even myself, I'm guilty of talking about AI, maybe too much. Some would argue maybe too much, but you can't talk about enterprise tech without talking about the most AI-driven ERP platform. All the vendors are talking about it. They all are investing heavily in AI. It's sort of a nuclear arms race, it seems like, to who can build the strongest platform with the best data and the best AI capabilities to really get to this utopia of AI. And let's start with the runner-up. The runner-up is a software vendor you've all probably heard of. It has advanced AI and machine learning tightly integrated into its ERP system, particularly strong in finance and analytics. And that runner-up is Oracle Fusion, or Oracle Cloud ERP, I should say. I still call it Fusion, but Oracle Cloud ERP. So that's the runner-up for being most AI-driven. And the winner of most AI-driven platform is SAP S/4HANA. And that is because, first of all, it has the broadest AI fabric embedded across S/4HANA, finance, supply chain, and industry solutions at a global scale. And I think the big thing that both SAP and Oracle both have going for them is just their sheer scale. The fact that they are used across so many big organizations, and they are, at least in the case of SAP, and I believe it's true for Oracle as well, SAP has gotten tens of thousands of their customers to agree to opt into sharing their data and using it to train Joule and other aspects of SAP's AI models. And so I think that alone gives them a unique advantage that a lot of other software vendors aren't going to have. Not to mention the fact that SAP customers have so much historical data, and they've been on SAP in many cases for decades now. So you've got these big, massive global organizations that have been using SAP forever, and now you've got all this data that's being trained to train the SAP AI models, and that gives SAP a pretty unique leg up, and maybe to a slightly lesser degree, Oracle as well. So what's your knee-jerk reaction to that, Greg? Any thoughts, comments on that?
Well, I do think that being AI driven is something that all of the ERP vendors and all of the edge solution providers are working toward. And when you showed our top 10 list, it's really apparent that AI is driving a lot of that top 10 decision process, right? Especially as we look at how that is becoming a part of the fabric of the ERP systems, as well as just being able to interoperate various systems, including legacy systems, right? So now we're looking at the the ERP or digital operations for an organization as an entire ecosystem connected very actively by AI. So vendors can't afford to fall behind. And that is one of the reasons why we ranked the top 10 in the top 10. So just amazing with the advent of AI. And you're right, we're all saying it too much, right?
I know.
I got to see that blooper reel where you say AI like 1,000 times.
I'm actually going to publish it because what's even funnier is it's number one was AI. And then number two, you might appreciate this because you and I know each other well. The number two word that I most commonly use in my podcast is So it shows me saying AI. And then it says number two, the number two most commonly used word in your podcast is So it's me just going, and so that.
And as we all know with AI and transcripts, that comes up all the time. So
I know. I wish it was smart enough to know.
It's terrible.
You need to make me look smarter by taking out the but AI has not figured that out yet. And see, I just did it again. See, now I'm self-conscious of my So here's the, actually, I meant to show you this earlier. Here is the QR code to download our 2026 ERP report. So a lot of these vendors are talking about in these different categories, like the one we just discuss, the most AI-driven ERP platform, the top 10 rankings, pros and cons of different systems, as well as general industry trends. You can find that in that ERP report. So be sure to scan it here. I'll drop it in the comments as well. You can download that and read that for free on our website. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. But it's a really good report that our team put together. So please check it out and let us know what you think. Want to get to a couple other quick comments, and then I'll turn it over to you, Greg, for the next category, the next winner in the next category. We have, let's see, Paolav on YouTube says, I'm digital transformation in Thailand for enterprise company. We use Oracle for headquarters and composable model with Boomi Connect to leave Cal Software ERP. So
interesting.
Yeah, so you're getting into a category we're going to get to later, which is composable ERP. Integration is going to be a theme we talk about here today. So thanks for that feedback. That is something we look at too. And I think that's why it's so hard now to say just what are the top 10 ERP systems or what are the best ERP systems, because those lines are blurring so much between traditional ERP and more composable ERP and integration platforms. So great point. Thank you for sharing that. Asrar on LinkedIn says hi. So thank you for being here today, Asrar. Here's a comment from Mahad Diwan on Maha from Egypt on YouTube. Says Odoo is gaining a good marketplace in Egypt. We will, spoiler alert, Odoo, among many other vendors, will be receiving awards here today as well. So be sure to stick around for that. This is a comment from YouTube. It says none of the top 10 is really open source. Issues in 2026 are still centered around license costs. AI for the small and mid market is still a challenge to justify the ROI, and that's a great point. And ROI is a word that we've forgotten in this industry in many cases. What's the business value? What's the ROI? Is it worth the investment we're going to make? So great points there. All right, well, let's get on to the next category, Greg. What's next on our list here?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I lost my first card. I've got the cards for the rest of the awards, but the card that we're pretending that I'm holding up is best ERP for Microsoft-centric organizations.
Okay.
And surprisingly, the runner-up is NetSuite. Basically a strong SaaS ERP, but it lacks some of the native productivity layer integration, especially with the Microsoft suite. The winner of the category, again, not surprisingly, is Microsoft Dynamics 365. I mean, when you look at the seamless integration across Azure, Power Platform, Teams, Office, it makes a natural choice for Microsoft heavy environments, right? You really can't get past the interconnectivity of all of those systems, the useful just log in or plug in, plug out, easy access to all of your applications in one spot. The 365 Finance and Operations stands out. because it is a modern ERP platform embedded within one of the most complete enterprise ecosystems available today. So as a part of the broader Microsoft Cloud, the hyperscaler infrastructure with Azure is just an amazing platform. And also you can't you can't approximate on-premise like we used to. The hyperscaler attention to security, to all of the different things that go into billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. And that's going to become even more important as we get into AI actually composing those applications that are running on that platform. So what do you think about those choices for Microsoft centric?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I'd also add that NetSuite, I'm not sure why it is or if others agree with me on this, but NetSuite, in some ways, it has a similar look and feel as Microsoft. I feel like people that know Microsoft tools really well, NetSuite is an intuitive transition or an intuitive extension of that knowledge. But one thing that, as you were saying all this, I was thinking about, 10 or 20 years ago, I remember getting client feedback and even peer feedback in the industry about how Microsoft's enterprise tech strategy was kind of disjointed. It was kind of a mess because they had, at the time they had several different ERP systems between Navision, Exapta, Great Plains, et cetera. And then, then they still had the Power Apps. They had Azure more recently, but they just had all this different stuff happening, all these different things they're investing in that it seemed kind of messy at the time. But now you look at it and think, maybe it's really smart. Maybe they just were ahead of their time and now we're all catching up. And now I think Microsoft does have an advantage because, one size does not fit all, and Microsoft fits that philosophy really well because they've got all these different systems. And to your point, people are used to using Microsoft productivity tools in the workplace anyway. So when you throw D365 or Power Apps or whatever, Power BI on top of that, it's an easier transition for them in many cases.
Correct. And we all know that Excel is the largest ERP system in the world, right?
Yes, it is. It's underrated. It's been the number one ERP system for about 40 years now, I imagine.
40 years? Sure.
Yeah. It's just all the other systems are all just noise, right? We're just trying to figure out a way to replace those Excel spreadsheets. But it is true. I mean, I think we're always going to have spreadsheets, and the fact that Microsoft is able to so seamlessly tie together some of those different applications, I think is super powerful.
Definitely.
Good. Well, here's the next category: best ERP for upper, small, and mid-market and lower mid-market organizations. Upper, small, and mid-sized companies, lower mid-market. So basically not small companies, but more, call it the larger small companies, the smaller mid-sized companies, right in that mid-market. What are the leading systems there? So let's start with the runner-up. Runner-up, you've probably heard of the winner. You may not have heard of the runner-up. So the runner-up, I'll tell you first why they're the runner-up. They have a good balance of flexibility, modern architecture, and predictable pricing for growing organizations. And they do focus on and tailor organizations in this space. And that runner-up is Acumatica. So if you're not familiar with them, it's spelled ACU Matica, one C in the spelling there. So that's a runner-up. Acumatica, the runner-up for best ERP for upper, small, and mid-sized companies. And then the winner for this category is particularly strong in manufacturing and distribution, and I'd say also retail centric mid-market firms. And that winner for this category is Epicor. So best ERP for upper SMB, lower mid-market organizations is Epicor, company that's been around for a long time. Great product suite that we've seen used successfully. A lot of our clients are implementing it now or have implemented it recently. What are your thoughts on that category, Greg?
I think that especially Epicor is really an outstanding choice as a winner. They have done a lot in the last, call it 6 years, with their executive team really going out and acquiring the right software systems and edge solutions to make it a more complete solution, especially in the manufacturing space, right? Field services they recently added 2 years ago. I think it became GA. But they do some incredible things with CPG, with the or CPQ, excuse me, and the field service piece of it, which a lot of the clients that we work with and talk to are looking for those specific niche pieces. And that's why a lot of the clients that we've worked with over the last 4 or 5 years have chosen Epicor and gone in that direction.
Right.
The implementations are going well too, for the most part, with Epicor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For a while, they had, I'd say this is probably 10 or 15 years ago. They went through, Epicor went through a couple private equity ownership changes. And for a while there, they had a strategy where they were very product centric to the point where they were under investing, or in some cases retrenching from building out their ecosystem of implementation partners. And, I know a lot of their implementation partners for a while there were feeling neglected and not supported by Epicor. And it was, they're building they had always had a pretty good product, but they didn't always have the ecosystem to support it. But more recently, in the last, I'd say 5 or 10 years, they've really invested heavily in that ecosystem of implementation partners, which is arguably just as, maybe even more important than the product itself. So I think they've come a long way just in the last 5 years. And a lot of that is due to leadership changes. I think they're finally have a relatively stable leadership team that's seems to be taking them in the right direction.
Yeah, and Acumatica, I mean, it's if you haven't heard of Acumatica, you will. So, I mean, I see ads in the airport all of the time now for Acumatica, but they're really making great strides. So,
yeah, we didn't have a category for highest growth or most up and coming. We have some similar categories, but Acumatica would probably be on that list, in the top tier of that list if we did have it.
Definitely.
Yeah, very cool. Just a couple quick comments here before I turn it over to you for the next category, Greg. Hopefully you have the card for this next one, right?
I do.
Oh, good. Good comments here. This is from Brandon on YouTube. I find it interesting where ERP fits now. Do you extend the ERP usage to analytics or go to a true EPM platform? That's a very expensive question. And it is, and that's a great question. It gets back to, this category we first started with, the most AI-driven platform. Oracle is the runner-up here. And one of the big strengths of Oracle that we didn't talk about is just their EPM capabilities. I mean, that's probably where Oracle is the strongest, is just in enterprise performance management, analytics, BI. I mean, that's something that in even financial consolidations and financial reporting, that's an area that Oracle has been very strong in. So I guess it depends on what your ERP system is. If you have Oracle, you could probably use Oracle as that EPM platform. But if it's a different ERP system, you might want or need a bolt-on or a more advanced EPM sort of platform. What are your thoughts, Greg?
Well, some of the solutions that we looked at in the top 10 list, Snowflake, Palantir, and others, really comprise that data layer on top of enterprise solutions, legacy solutions, and so forth. So when we get into composable ERP, it really does become a choice. Do I go with a single ERP vendor and their business intelligence, their AI, and have that seamlessly working throughout? Or do I go to a solution that is specifically focused on just BI and analytics? I think it really depends on your business, and it depends on the amount of customization and change you're willing to go through to bolt those systems together. Yeah,
absolutely. Those are really good points. SYR on LinkedIn says Microsoft also has Business Central for small and mid-size enterprises. Great point. We did not clarify that, but when we talk about Microsoft and Microsoft usability and Microsoft look and feel, Microsoft ERP, there's D365 F&O, which is finance and operations, and there's D365 Business Central, which is more for the small and mid-market companies. So we sort of lumped it all together into Microsoft D365 as a broader category, but it is worth noting that there are 2 different flavors of D365 for sure. Here's a question around Epicor having Thai localization. I believe Epicor does. Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost positive that Epicor does have Thai localization. Whether or not they have implementation partners in Thailand, I'm not sure. But I do know, or I do believe they have localization there. Here's a comment from Edigem on YouTube. I've been on the HCM and payroll space for a very big portion of my career, and many of my clients are approaching vendor selection with a best of breed mindset. I concur. A lot of our clients are doing the same. We do still have some that are focused on one system, but I'd say it's a really good mix of people that are looking at traditional ERP versus ones that are looking at more of a best of breed sort of implementation. And then Brandon on YouTube says, ERP implementations have always been large, costly, timely, ongoing implementations, and that's why the large consulting firms love them. Do you think AI decreases time and cost of implementation? Yes, it should. If it's not, then you should probably challenge your system integrator, your implementation partner. Why are you not using AI to help reduce your cost? And the answer may be because it's not a conflict of interest, but it's not self-serving to use AI to reduce the time and cost for clients, because it reduces the time and cost or the revenue to consulting firms. And that's why we push really hard to use AI in our client engagements to allow them to accelerate the implementation timeline. And so we have a mission control AI tool set that allows clients to really take control of their implementations and capture that information and help accelerate and just start some of the work that system integrators typically had taken too long to do.
It really is the difference between that traditional systems integrator approach to massive consulting sides of the project team, going in and doing a lot of work that now can be accomplished by AI in minutes or hours rather than days or weeks. So you're right. Vested interest in that.
The manual time it takes to document requirements, to document test scenarios, training materials, customizing training materials for your business or your industry, all that stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that it's important to do, but it's also time consuming and expensive. But now AI allows you to speed that up and focus more on the strategic thinking part of these implementations rather than the grunt work behind it. All right. So what's the next category, Greg?
All right. So I've got my card up, right? So this time I actually have the card. Best ERP for SMBs, broad market. Okay. And the runner up, Acumatica again. So we've got Acumatica in several categories here. So if you haven't heard about it again, it's time to learn. Acumatica is increasingly competitive for SMBs seeking flexibility and cost transparency. I mean, they do have a great cost model in terms of the way that it's put together and deployed. The winner in this category is actually NetSuite. So we've got NetSuite coming in as the winner of the best ERP for SMBs. In our client engagements, we see NetSuite actually being successful many times. Between the suite success model for implementation and the proven SaaS ERP with broader adoption across retail, e-commerce, and professional services, NetSuite is a natural winner in this category. Their key strength is the breadth of the functionality that they bring. It's delivered out of the box in large part, and then augmented by an ecosystem of suite apps and third-party extensions that address industry-specific needs. And Oracle's continued investment has expanded global capabilities and improved analytics, while Suite Cloud enables developers and partners to extend the platform without compromising maintainability, which was always a really big problem. Anytime you implemented a system and you were integrating it with either legacy systems or something else as a third party, that integration was always a struggle, right? You upgrade one side of it and it breaks the integration, you have to go back and fix it. They have really just included maintainability of those interconnections as a kind of a native part of the fabric of NetSuite. So very impressive, and it's working great for smaller and mid-sized businesses.
Yeah. And it's interesting too with NetSuite how not only have they been laser focused on the small and mid market, but also how they are sort of the OG, the original, one of the original cloud providers in the market place, back in 98 when they started the company and built the product, with Larry Ellison's involvement from Oracle as well. They were way ahead of their time, building stuff in the cloud and multi-tenant cloud too, at a time when companies just weren't doing that. It's been more recently in the last 10 years or so that cloud has really gotten the attention of the marketplace. So now they're in a unique position because while a lot of traditional on-premise software vendors now are still trying to make that jump over to the cloud from on-premise, NetSuite's been in the cloud the whole time. And this is also true for Salesforce and for Workday as well, among others. But NetSuite has that unique advantage in that they were one of the pioneers of multi-tenant cloud, SaaS cloud.
Oh, definitely. Great point.
Very cool. All right. And, shifting gears, doing a total 180 on what you just talked about, Greg, on the category there. You were talking about small and mid-market. This is the best ERP for large, complex enterprises. Of all the categories in the awards we do, this might be the most anticlimactic one, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. You might be able to guess what the two are. The runner-up for best ERP for large, complex enterprises, and you might know this, I think I stole my own thunder by talking about this a moment ago, but the runner-up is especially strong for finance-led, cloud-first enterprise transformations. They're very good at EPM, analytics, financial reporting, among other things. And that is Oracle Cloud ERP. So Oracle Cloud ERP is the runner-up for large, complex global organizations. And the winner, most of you could probably guess. Drop it in the chat if you want to guess ahead of me before I say it. Still the benchmark for global scale organizations. The product is probably best to handle global regulatory complexity and tax reporting, financial reporting requirements, and deeply integrated enterprise operations. The winner for large, complex enterprises is SAP S/4HANA. Still the gold standard for large companies that are trying to automate and integrate their operations. As complex as it is, as many challenges as there might be with S/4HANA implementations, it still is the leader, and it still is in many ways unrivaled, other than maybe with Oracle, in terms of being able to handle the scale and complexities of some of these large organizations. Are you surprised by that, Greg? Was that
No, I think those are two clear winners in the category. But I will say that one of the reasons why SAP has had such great staying power and really has been adopted and retained by a lot of organizations is because they've been around for 30 years, 35 plus years.
Well, as a company, SAP's been about 50 years, but the product is probably S/4HANA. Right. I think it's about 10 or 12 years old now.
10 or 12. But the ecosystem, the partner ecosystem they built around the world, if you look at global organizations that are looking for a seasoned, well-experienced team that's going to go in and provide specific industry expertise in the implementation, SAP is unsurpassed. Oracle's becoming close, I think, in terms of that ecosystem around the world. But as important as choosing your partner on the software vendor side, choosing your SI or your systems integrator for the implementation is important. And that SAP network, although expensive, is very well proven. So,
yeah, and so many big companies already have deep SAP capabilities built up, even if it's in ECC or even R3 in some cases. So they've invested heavily in the SAP product suite over the years, and now many of them are still struggling to make that transition over to S/4HANA. But to move from ECC to a non-SAP product is a big lift, and I think a lot of organizations don't have any good options besides that, which creates, topic for another conversation. It creates a whole nother set of issues for SAP customers, but part of that is because SAP has built such a good product suite for that market, for the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 market. Good deal. Someone guessed SAP. I apologize, I can't see the name, but someone guessed and of course
it was me. It was me.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't show the name. That's funny. So okay, well, good. What's next, Greg?
Market momentum and strategy awards. I think we're moving right into that, right? So as we were going through some different categories, we wanted to not only choose the winners for the core ERP. You'll see another couple of categories here as we move along. Some of them kind of playful and fun, but the market momentum and strategy awards, I think are kind of vitally important, because that really tells us where ERP as a discipline is going. And I think looking at our different categories here, the first one that comes up is one that I do have a card for. So the vendor turnaround and comeback of the year.
Ooh, this should be
Is
good.
is that weighty or what?
That is comeback. Everyone likes a good comeback story, a good Rocky Balboa story, underdog type story.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want to put your guesses in the chat, you could do so. We've got a runner up here with QAD. And QAD has renewed clarity and discipline in the manufacturing focused strategy. Eric, I think you recently attended a conference with QAD. It's just amazing what they're doing as a business, right? As a vendor partner with their industry focus. I think they're especially in the medium to large market, they're really expanding very quickly, doing very well. The winner in this category is one of the long-standing standouts in the ERP space, and that's Infor. Quiet but meaningful improvements in execution, industry focus, and customer satisfaction. They've really been working on the customer satisfaction. They've got a very seasoned, and I've used that word a couple of times. That's kind of like your right?
Yeah.
Very, very experienced and forward-looking, forward-thinking executive team. And that executive team has brought together both the technology components, the business process components. They've really just come into the AI world. I remember years ago when they introduced AI Coleman, and here more recently, it has moved into or evolved into the Velocity Suite. And the Velocity Suite and tools really just enhances by providing integration in an AI layer that extends Cloud Suite's capabilities to other systems. It makes it a natural fit for hybrid environments, for the ability to develop that composable ERP and what we refer to commonly as digital enterprise operations. Surrounding the core ERP and your quote back office functions, the blend of specialization and openness allows organizations to serve very select industry segments. So you've got Cloud Suite Industrial, you've got LN, M3, and some of the other flavors of Infor, but all of them work very specific industries and occupy roles and positions in those industries that are really kind of unsurpassed. And that has really developed over the last 2 to 3 years, in my view. They were laggards about 10 years ago. So
yeah,
what do you think about that?
they've gone from being I've heard you use this phrase too, Greg, but I've heard others say it too in the past, but Infor has gone from being the place where old ERP systems go to die, because they bought Bond, they bought Lawson, there's others that they bought, kind of these legacy products that no longer exist. But what happened was not only did they acquire that customer base, but then they acquired a lot of, technical capabilities and functional capabilities in those systems. And now they're migrating a lot of that over to Infor Cloud Suite. And to your point, they've got that Velocity integration, interoperability platform sort of approach. And I think the cool thing about Infor is that I think they provide a good alternative to companies that maybe are either not quite big enough or they just don't want to deal with the rigidity of an SAP or an Oracle, but they need something that can still scale. And I think Infor fits nicely there, especially for manufacturing and distribution type companies where Microsoft D365 may not be strong enough in those areas, but Infor does have a lot of industry specific capabilities too. So I think they're in a pretty unique spot.
Manufacturing, distribution, public sector.
Yeah, public sector.
Healthcare.
Yeah.
They're very industry focused.
Yeah. And QAD, I don't want to gloss too much over them, but they're interesting because I don't know about you, Greg, but I don't know that I can think of an example of a software vendor that has done such a hard pivot on their strategy and overall approach, because they've gone from being, a very focused, fairly solid ERP provider that focused a lot on automotive manufacturing is one area that they've always been very strong in. But the software itself, the technology itself was becoming pretty dated. And so they have a new CEO, new leadership team, and a totally different strategy now where they're coming in and not really becoming just an ERP provider. They're trying to be more of an AI platform provider that plays nicely with other systems. So they're not coming in with an ERP strategy per se. They're coming in with more of a platform strategy, which I think is really interesting. And it's still early, which is why they're a runner up. And who knows, maybe next year or the year after, they'll be the winner, depending on how they execute. But so far, the signs are pretty encouraging in terms of how they're moving in that direction, how quickly they've made the pivot. So
They absolutely have.
very interesting stuff. Before I get to the next category, just a couple audience questions here. Pal Lover on YouTube says, I don't agree. Big enterprise has a decision maker that doesn't want responsibility to choose other alternative solutions. It's true. That's why a lot of companies stick with SAP and Oracle, because it's perceived to be too risky to do anything other than SAP or Oracle. So it's not always the best reason to choose an ERP system. It's usually not the best reason, but for some it works, for some it doesn't. But that's why we have these award shows and these rankings to show you that there are other alternatives out there, especially if you have a clear, deliberate strategy that might point you in a different direction. There's a comment from Edigem on YouTube. From my experience, main reasons beyond vendor costs and lack of incentives for being efficient, and the disclaimer here is I'm an ex Big Four guy. There's very shy of any preparation and buy-in on the transformation. That's true. If you don't get alignment, buy-in, preparation, all that stuff, that's what's going to drive up your cost. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, and very, very similar to this comment. I mean, vendor lock-in, so that the executive level goes with SAP because they don't think that any other path is going to be as successful. So the lift and shift idea, that is what appeals as a least risky course. But it goes back to before you even start on this journey, right, with your chosen vendor, you really have to go through that phase 0 internally and align the organization behind exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Begin with the end in mind, right? And so I think that comment here is just perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why phase 0 is so important. And you and I espouse that and talk about that a lot in our client work every day.
Absolutely.
And then one more comment from Asrar on LinkedIn. One of the systems acquired by Infor is Sun Systems for Hospitality. I totally forgot about Sun. So thank you for
Yeah.
I knew there was another vendor I was forgetting that Infor had bought, and Sun is one of them. I'm here with Greg Benton hosting the 2025 ERP Awards Show. We've got a lot more to cover in episode 255 of Transformation Ground Control. Be sure to stick around. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola.
If you're about to embark on the jungle of digital transformation, check out my new book, Welcome to the Jungle. It's a book that just came out in late 2025. It's my second book, and it's a book that focuses on digital transformation failure case studies and talks about the lessons and takeaways from that. It's 300 pages packed of all the lessons and things that I've learned from having been an expert witness in lawsuits related to digital transformations, and also with our team helping clients recover some of their failed projects. I've included as many lessons that I could possibly fit into one book here. You can read this book. You can order it anywhere in the world in hard copy format, which is this format here. You can get it in paperback. You can also get it electronically as well. Scan the QR code right here or go to the links below for your copy. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 255. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent tech agnostic consulting company that helps clients with their digital transformations throughout the world. And the show is produced by Major Tom Productions. If you'd like to learn more about how to collaborate with us on this podcast or other content we produce, be sure to reach out to us. I've included contact information for Major Tom Productions below. So we're here doing our first annual ERP Awards show with Greg Benton. Let's jump back into the next category. And we've got a lot of categories to get to still. Best industry-focused ERP strategy. This is a good one because this focuses on highlighting those software vendors that aren't necessarily trying to be everything to everyone. They're not trying to solve all the world's problems. They're just trying to solve problems with specific industries. So they've gone deep into certain industries rather than going broad across all industries. So I'll tell you right now, at companies like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft D365 did not make the cut on this category, even though they do have some industry capabilities. They've got some pre-configurations and other capabilities that can help you in different industries, but they're not as focused as these two are. So the runner-up for best industry-focused ERP strategy, there's actually two of them here. This one, actually, this is true for both of them, but the first runner-up has strong vertical depth in manufacturing, healthcare, and distribution, and that runner-up is Infor with Infor Cloud Suite. And there's actually a second runner-up here too, and this is a company you may not have heard of. It's an Israeli company that does a lot with manufacturing, distribution, retail, among others. They have a very strong presence in the Middle East and Europe, but not so much in the Americas yet. Although they're trying to make inroads more globally. But that runner-up, the other runner-up for best industry-focused ERP strategy is Priority Software. So that's another system worth looking into, especially if you're in manufacturing, distribution, or retail. And there's other industries too. They've got different industry solutions for different industries. So Infor and Priority Software are the two runners-up. And then the winner is a product or a vendor that provides clear leadership in asset-intensive and service-centric industries, including workforce management, anything to do with maintenance and repair, managing big, expensive assets like machinery and equipment out in the field. Any organization that has those sorts of needs might benefit from this type of software. And the winner for best industry-focused ERP strategy is IFS Software. They're another company that has come a long way in the last 10 or 20 years. To be honest, this category is really hard because there's a lot of really good options. There's probably 5 more we could easily say should be, a winner or runner-up at least. But what are your thoughts on that category, Greg?
I had the pleasure of going to an IFS conference a couple of months ago, and the integration with AI is just amazing. Some of their focus on, for instance, field service organizations and utilities. They've made great strides in being able to really automate the process of driving by and checking the different locations for transformers and things like that that can actually be remotely assessed by AI and immediately broadcast back to the maintenance facility, and crews can be called out. They have the right equipment when they go. It's just amazing that they're adapting with AI to improve speed, the strength of their response, and especially in energy and utilities, really making some great strides. So,
Yeah, very much so. Good. What's next?
next, we've got a different category here that really goes to the idea of managing your expectations with a vendor, and then make sure that you manage your contracts with a vendor. It's the best ERP licensing and commercial flexibility. This one was hard to pick because it's not well known how all of the different ERP vendors stack up side by side. You really have to take a lot of anecdotal information, and things change on a fiscal basis, right? In terms of contracts, in terms of the terms of the agreement, especially in SaaS agreements, where you're going to have subscription for a number of years. There are accelerators in some of those agreements, but the runner-up here is Microsoft Dynamics 365, modular SaaS licensing aligned with composable adoption. You can use a little or a lot of Microsoft D365, and that makes it very flexible in terms of the deployment, right? The winner is Acumatica. So we had Acumatica in the other category as a second runner-up, but here a winner. Resource-based pricing remains one of the most customer-friendly models in ERP. And that's the way that ERP systems used to basically contract on the on-premise solutions, but Acumatica has really moved this into another level and make it very efficient to be able to determine exactly what you're going to get, how much it's going to cost, and they're very open about that. So if you're looking for vendor management that is going to be successful ongoing, Acumatica might be a good choice for you.
Yeah. And again, you mentioned it before, but it's a system that's not always the best known out there, but it is one that's definitely up and coming. And you do have to look at licensing costs and flexibility, especially in today's cloud subscription-based environment, where you've really handed off or passed a lot of the pricing leverage off to your vendor. And it's becoming a challenge for a lot of companies to manage those costs and to justify the cost of their cloud subscription. So having the best commercial terms may not be the sexiest, coolest topic that we cover here today, or category that we cover, but it is an important one for CIOs and leaders to consider.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's one that you love, Greg. I know you're going to have some thoughts on this, I'm sure. That is best composable ERP strategy. And let me let Greg back in. There we go.
There you go.
You just disappeared for right as I was getting into a
So did you.
So best composable ERP strategy that actually works in practice. Composable ERP is one of those terms that's becoming potentially overused. It's becoming a big buzzword, hype word, or whatever. So we wanted to focus it on composable strategy tools that actually work, that we're actually seeing in action right now with our clients. So the runner-up is a product that has purpose-built composability that prioritizes speed and adaptability. It's built with AI embedded within it. It's built to essentially work and play nicely with other ERP systems. And it's a way to provide that, I don't want to call it the last mile, but that tool that ties everything together across multiple platforms, multiple data sets, et cetera. It also has the luxury of being founded by the company that produces this product is founded by a legend in the ERP space. He founded Bond Software, which we talked about. Infor now owns Bond, but Jan Bond started this company. It's a product called Rapid. So the runner-up for best composable ERP strategy that actually works in practice is Rapid. And the winner is a vendor that we've talked about a couple times so far here today. I'm going to give it away before. I'm going to try and be dramatic and build up to it, but you're all going to know what it is before I get to it. It has Power Platform and Azure that enable modular ERP without turning transformation into a science project. And the winner for best composable ERP strategy is Microsoft D365, in particular, the F&O version of D365, Finance and Operations. For those of you that know the difference, not Business Central per se, but more on the finance and operation side of D365, that is the winner for best composable strategy. What are your thoughts, Greg? You love this category. I know you have a lot.
I do love this category, and Jan Bon is quite the legend, right? I think back in the 80s, he actually took something like 40,000 Boeing employees off of the mainframe and into a new modern ERP system, right? And as you say, that's now owned by Infor. But Jan has been a pioneer in the ERP space. He's also a pioneer in the agentic AI space. So as you said, the composable nature of Rapid is that it sits on top of your legacy ERP system and can manage workflow across the top of that legacy ERP. So you don't necessarily have to replace that monolithic ERP back office system. Now you can actually upgrade, update, and create the flexibility on the top of that goes along with a much more nimble, much more rapid implementation.
Right. Yeah.
Time to value is everything.
Yes. In fact, someone on YouTube here, Pal Lover, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your handle or your name there, says Microsoft. Yes, I agree for composable very fast. So the audience, at least one person in the audience, agrees with you as well there. There's another one I was going to get to. Bear with me. Oh, here's a comment. I don't know if you saw this come up yet, Greg, but this is from Brandon Beam on YouTube. Brandon says, do you guys plan to do an awards for CPM? Been in the space for a while, and the amount of new players is incredible, and the ERP systems are players as well with their finance analytics solutions. I like this because it means at least one person watching here today wants us to do another award show. That's all we're hoping for. Just one of you that wants to see us do this again. So thank you for that comment. Maybe we will do more award shows in different categories. Asrar on LinkedIn says IBM Maximo is also good for equipment preventative maintenance. So that is a very good product as well. It's one that I've worked with a lot over the years. So, all right. Is it my turn or your turn, Greg? I can't remember. I think
it's my turn.
Yeah.
So the best ERP integration and interoperability platform. So this is one of your favorites, Eric.
It is.
And it's very similar to the last category.
It is. It's a little bit of
overlap. It is. So the runner-up here is particularly strong with the Microsoft ecosystem, and you're probably going to be able to guess it before I get it out. But the third-party and SaaS tools that are available with this system are really pretty limitless. And the runner-up is Microsoft D365. So again, we're seeing Microsoft D365 come up several times. It's no surprise. The winner in this category is a little bit surprising, and this shows you how objective we're trying to be in the decisions, because it's SAP. SAP industry-leading integration across ERP and non-ERP ecosystems. So you think about a lot of those legacy systems, they aren't necessarily all SAP. SAP integrates very nicely, plays very nicely with a lot of those systems. So upgrade that core and bring everything else into an S4 environment, and you can still operate with a lot of the legacy systems that are your secret sauce as an organization. The common thread between these two is composability. That ability to evolve without disruption, integrate without dependence, and innovate without rebuilding everything. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's, an area that is a point of controversy in our industry and it always has been, but I think it's becoming more heated, the debate in terms of, do you want one single unified ERP system or do you want more of like an integration platform and capability? And, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, integrating different systems and building middleware and all that stuff was such a huge pain in the ass that a lot of companies didn't want to do it or they shied away from it. But now it's just different, especially with like the advent of Boomi and MuleSoft and some of these integration tools. It makes it a lot easier and more feasible to tie together multiple systems. Yeah, good stuff. I like it. And this is actually another topic or another category that's very much related to the last two around composable ERP and integration. And this one is the best data-driven enterprise platform. So ERP adjacent. We're not talking about necessarily just ERP here. We're talking about best data-driven enterprise platform. So the platform that can provide the best integration and data across the organization, regardless of whether it's ERP or any other platform. And the runner-up is a vendor or product that has continued progress integrating ERP, analytics, and data infrastructure. Very big in cloud, very strong cloud financial results and cloud conversions amongst their customer base. And it's one we've talked about a couple times here so far today. And that runner-up is Oracle Cloud ERP. So that's the runner-up for best data-driven enterprise platform. And the winner is one we have not talked about yet. This is, I think, the first time this vendor's name has come up. And this vendor is increasingly central to operational decision-making beyond traditional ERP boundaries. They made a name for themselves in the government space, large federal governments throughout the world. It was an area where they really sunk in their teeth. It's very AI friendly. I mean, there's a lot of AI capabilities built into this tool set. So the winner for best data-driven enterprise platform is Palantir. And that's another product that I know you and I have talked a lot about and worked closely with. Greg, what are your thoughts on?
Well, we've worked closely with Palantir for years, before they were even well known as they are in the marketplace now. And the ontology layer that they can bring to bear really makes it more of a workflow management tool, and incorporating BI as well on top of that is unsurpassed. They've made huge strides. I don't know if you've seen how they're doing in the stock market, but generally recognized as one of the leading AI-driven platforms out there. And they have been very strong on the government side. They're rapidly moving into the private sector. So look to see a lot more some of the other interoperability solutions. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, what do you have next?
I've got a different category, but it's related to the last category. So here we go again. Best enterprise data cloud ERP adjacent powerhouse. And what we mean by ERP adjacent is really kind of the genesis for our top 10 list as well. So we were looking at those ERP adjacent tool sets that really bring things together from a digital enterprise operations and a digital transformation standpoint. And the runner-up has a strong AI and data science capability, especially for advanced analytics teams, and that is Databricks. Databricks has also partnered very closely with a lot of the larger ERP tier 1 systems. And so you see Databricks just about everywhere. They're kind of ubiquitous in the ecosystem right now. The winner is Snowflake. So not a real surprise there. They're the de facto data backbone for modern enterprises. They enable analytics, AI, and interoperability across multi-ERP environments. So as you have disparate systems that need to be joined by a number of integration points that are composable, Snowflake is a very common and very relevant choice. They bring data into a single secure ecosystem, and then they allow organizations to layer advanced analytics, machine learning, and decision automation across just about every function in the organization. So what do you think about those?
It's great. We see a lot of clients that use Snowflake and Databricks, both of those solutions. And it's just these last several categories are really interesting because hopefully it's opening up the eyes of different options and different strategies you can take or pursue with your enterprise tech, because it's not just one size fits all or even one category fits all. And that's why we're doing all these different strange categories, is because these are the things you have to think about when you go through these evaluations and potential digital strategies. But I think, Snowflake and Databricks are great examples of not newcomers. They're not newcomers, but 10 or 20 years ago, we weren't talking about those two vendors, but now they're very relevant, and they've disrupted the space in a good way and given us a lot more options to think about. So here's an interesting one as we get toward the end here. These are some fun ones. Most overhyped ERP trend of the year. Love to hear the audience feedback on this, because this was actually a really hard one, because there's so many overhyped trends of the year. And that's what we like to do, is make fun of our own industry and ourselves at time. And this is a good way to make fun of ourselves and our industry. So the runner-up for most overhyped ERP trend of the year, and again, drop it in the comments. I'm going to stall a little bit to give you a chance to comment here from the audience. But the runner-up is fit to standard, solves everything. And that is until a real world complexity shows up, or the reality of your industry, the reality of your unique business operations shows up, then fit to standard suddenly doesn't sound so good. I think that's one. It's actually more than just an overhyped trend. It's actually a dangerous trend, because thinking that you can just do everything fit to standard, or 99% of your implementation fit to standard, I think that creates a lot more problems than it solves, even if it were to be somewhat realistic. But the winner, and this hopefully is no surprise, the winner for most overhyped ERP trend of the year is that AI will fix your broken processes. And bad news here is that AI will not fix your broken processes. I'm really sorry. AI is really cool, but it's not going to fix your broken processes. It accelerates outcomes, but doesn't replace governance or leadership. Definitely doesn't replace data governance. It doesn't replace just common sense and, smooth business processes. What are your thoughts, Greg? Do you agree with those overhyped trends? Would you add anything?
No, but our next category is going to add some things.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, the next category, as you might have guessed, is most abused buzzwords in ERP sales decks. All right, so we see a lot of sales decks, right? And the runner-up here is one of my favorites. It's best practices. So it's frequently undefined and context free, right? It doesn't really mean very much. It means that you're going to accept everything that we have as a standard, quote, out of the box, and it's going to adhere to our best practices. Well, that may not be your best practices. so
Right.
A very abused term.
But it
Aiming
sounds
for
so good,
average practices to fit a vendor software is really what best practices is all about.
Yeah, by definition, best practices for a vendor has to be somewhat watered down, because it has to be the lowest common denominator that will work for the most companies, which means it's not best practice. It just means more companies might be able to use it.
Average practices.
Yeah.
This is the average practice.
But see, that doesn't sell. It doesn't sound good. If I'm a sales guy, I can't sell that. I can
It
sell
doesn't.
that practice because that's what I want. That's what a buyer wants to hear.
Sell software.
Yeah.
And the winner here is too often used to dismiss legitimate business needs. And it's clean core.
Oh,
So
yes.
how many times we've just started hearing that a lot. You've got to get to a clean core. Well, clean core means you're giving up all of the secret sauce that made your business what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of going to best practices, because you're giving up all of your integrations and customizations that have kind of built your business over the years, and you're going with just a clean core, starting fresh. Sounds great, but it really isn't very practical.
That's the term that I think that's the term that makes me cringe the most in this space right now. It used to be best
Really?
practices. Now I think
I thought I saw you shudder a little bit. Yeah.
it was like nails on a chalkboard. It's like clean core, because it's just it's a powerful word. It's a powerful phrase because it's, if you think about the psychology of it, clean core, that sounds good. Like clean is good, dirty is bad. So I want a clean core, which means I get rid of all my customization and, like you said, the secret sauce. But the technologists in us all would love to have a clean core because it's easier to manage and maintain. But the business reality most commonly will determine that clean core is not the best situation, especially not across the board. Some parts of your business might be okay with clean core because you can live with whatever standard functionality exists in the system. But a lot of your secret sauce, your competitive differentiators, it's not going to exist in clean core. So what do? Well, you're either going to customize, you're going to do a bolt-on, you're going to add a platform. There's something you're going to have to do outside that clean core to make it work. So, okay, best slideware versus reality gap. So similar to what you were just talking about, Greg, the most abused term in the sales deck. This is a little bit different, but the best slideware versus reality gap. The runner-up is out-of-the-box demos, which is really a highly curated PowerPoint deck, and it's rarely representative of what the software can actually do, especially now with AI and cloud solutions that are half-baked or they're in the process of being developed. But you've got salespeople out there that have to sell the product, so they put together some cool, flashy PowerPoint slides that don't necessarily.
It's going to be GA in 6 months.
Right, exactly. It's on the roadmap.
Yep.
That's on the next iteration of the roadmap. And then the winner for best slideware versus reality gap is end-to-end ERP transformation timelines. They rarely survive first contact with execution. So again, it's a slideware that shows that we can implement the solution in 18 months, and here's how we're going to do it. That typically looks good on a PowerPoint slide, but typically does not match reality. So that's the winner for best slideware versus reality gap.
Very good.
All right, what next?
Just watching the time, we should probably.
Yeah, I've only got one more after this.
I've only got one more after this as well. So I think we're moving into a little bit different category, though. Surprise and Wildcat Awards, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, it's almost too bad we didn't put this at the front, because then we could have talked about this and then talked about it all the way through.
Right.
But within that category, we're looking at the surprise standout of the year, and the runner-up is we talked about it a little bit before. This is one of those low code platforms. It's up and coming. You're going to see a lot about it in the next year, and Rapid is the runner-up. So growing traction where flexibility and speed really matter when you're trying to go through a digital transformation, and that low code AI driven capabilities provide significant advantages in accessibility and adaptability of the system to work with a lot of your legacy systems. As Jan likes to call it, keep the castle and surround it with agentic AI and some of the workflow. So I think he refers to it also as massage the elephant, but don't be trampled by it. I love the way that he approaches things. The winner in this category, consistent execution without chasing headlines, industry-specific software built for better business, the strategy and a dynamic for long-standing executive team leadership with a strong recipe for success, and it's Infor again. And that's our surprise standout of the year, and I think a very appropriate winner slot for Infor this year. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're both doing pretty innovative things, both Rapid and Infor doing very innovative things. Things are different, things that are shaking up the industry quite a bit. So I agree with those both. Then the last one, I think, do you have one more, Greg, or is this the last one that I'm doing?
This is the last one.
Okay. So the last category, quietly doing the right things. It's another surprise wild card sort of a category here. So quietly doing the right things. The runner up is IFS, which has been focused on discipline and clarity over hype. IFS is very focused. They don't proclaim to be everything to everyone in different industries. In fact, there's times where we are evaluating IFS for potential software or for potential clients. And IFS oftentimes will be the first one to say, hey, this isn't a good fit for us, or this isn't what we do. Whereas a lot of other vendors will just chase it anyway. They'll try to win the deal, even if it's not.
Very honest approach.
Yeah. So IFS is a run-up for quietly doing the right things. And the winner for the quietly doing the right things category is not only the product itself. This is a company, more of a company-driven category, but it's QAD. Now, we talked about them earlier today. They've got their champion AI platform that they've recently rolled out. They've got their ERP tool set that is used primarily by manufacturing distribution types of companies. Very much focused on manufacturing distribution. They're not trying to get into government or financial services, anything like that. So QAD, great leadership team. A total overhaul of their leadership team and the product itself. So a lot of good stuff there. So the winner is QAD for quietly doing the right things. What are your thoughts on that one, Greg?
Excellent choices. And again, we're talking a lot about leadership teams in some of these vendor discussions. And as you're choosing a partner to be your vendor of choice going forward, after you get through that phase zero, right? The very important first part, you really have to look at their leadership team. You really have to look at their blueprints for what is coming next. You really have to know that they are going to be a great partner to you. And even getting back into that pricing category, right? So the negotiation all the way around revolves around all of those things that we've been looking at today. AI is certainly going to be an important factor going forward. Anybody that is not including that as a part of their fabric is losing out. I mean, it's just not going to probably be relevant in another 3 to 5 years. So choosing that partner for long-term success is really what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think these two do. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it. Those are the awards we've got for you today. We covered a lot of ground. We went long, so thanks for everyone hanging with us and staying with us. Thanks for staying on extra, Greg. But it was a fun session. Hopefully this gives you some things to think about as you look forward to your digital strategies in 2026 and beyond. If you are interested in learning more about trends in the industry and how different software solutions compare to one another, our company, Third Stage Consulting, is not affiliated with any of the software vendors that we just discussed, but you can learn more about different software solutions in the market and trends by downloading our 2026 Digital Transformation and ERP report. You can get that for free on our website. Just scan the QR code at the top of your screen here. We'll drop it in the chat as well. And I'd love to hear your feedback too. Those of you watching either now live or after the fact, we'd love to hear your feedback on these different categories, the different vendors that we talked about, your experience with any of these vendors, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's what we try to draw out from these types of conversations. So thank you for that. And thank you to Carrie on LinkedIn, who says, well done, gentlemen, very informative. So I hope you all found it informative as well. All right, that was great stuff. Thanks, Greg. That was a lot of fun to do and totally different than anything we've done in the past. And I think it's something we'll have to do again because it is fun. It's good. It's good to recognize software vendors for the work they do and to recognize where their strengths are, because every one of these vendors has very distinct strengths and they've got a unique position in the marketplace. And it's always good to understand how they compare to one another. So got a lot more to cover in this episode, though. We are going to get into, in just a moment, some of the industry forces that are tilting the playing field in favor of software vendors, but at the expense of their customers. We're going to talk about what that looks like here in just a moment, but be sure to stick around. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Hey, feeling good. like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Feeling good, like I should. When in dark, I walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my soul.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 255. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski, and you can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. We just had our ERP award show. We recognize a lot of the great work that software vendors have done and have been doing over the years, and we're talking about some of the strengths that these vendors have. And we're going to shift gears, though, now, and we're going to talk about the industry and the rewiring of the ERP and enterprise tech industry and how software vendors are doing a really good job of tilting the playing field to their advantage, which, you know, as business leaders, that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to figure out a way to give our organizations a unique competitive advantage that outperforms other organizations in our industry. Nothing wrong with that. But the important thing here, and I want to view it from the perspective of customers of software vendors, is to recognize how that playing field is shifting and how it's actually working against you. But more importantly, I want to talk about how to tilt the playing field back in your favor. How can you neutralize some of these advantages that software vendors have built that benefit them and they're actually harming you as an organization unintentionally? I don't think software vendors are out there trying to harm their customers, but it is harming them unintentionally and indirectly. It's harming customers. I'm going to explain why that is in this video, and I'm going to use a framework to explain it and to unpack the enterprise tech industry and some of the trends that are happening in the space. And then I'm going to look at it from both the vendor perspective, and then I'm going to look at it more from the customer perspective. And that's the part I really want to hone in on and make sure you understand is, you know, how is that playing field tilting away from you and how can you tilt it back to your favor? So let's roll the video and then we'll come back and chat about it. And it's a common knowledge or a common perception that implementing new technology is a good thing. It's going to help your business. It's going to give you ROI for years to come. It'll reduce technical debt. It'll make you future-proof. All this stuff that we're being promised within the tech space. However, there is a dark side of what comes with buying one of the ERP systems that are leading in the industry right now. There are industry forces at play that are benefiting ERP vendors greatly, and they're actually harming customers long-term. And I'm going to talk about a hypothetical but very relevant pragmatic model that'll help explain what I mean by that. Now, if you'd like to learn more about some of the trends that we're seeing in the digital transformation space, I also encourage you to download our 2026 Digital Transformation Report. You can learn about industry reviews and rankings, independent, objective views of the market, as well as trends and predictions for what we expect to see in the space. You can read that report by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. Now, first, it helps to unpack a model called Porter's Five Forces model. If you're not familiar with this model, it's developed by a professor named Michael Porter from Harvard Business School. He developed this model probably 40 years ago, but it's one of the most relevant and the most applicable industry forces models that I can think of in describing businesses and the industries that they compete in. And it's still to this day one of the most relevant models I can think of to analyze an industry. Essentially, what this model does is it unpacks 5 different dimensions of different industries to analyze the overall appeal of that industry. In other words, industries that don't have a lot of competition, that favor the incumbents and give power to the incumbents, that's something that's going to be favorable to the incumbents, but it's not going to be appealing to other potential entrants. and it's certainly not going to be appealing to customers. So the different dimensions that are evaluated in this model are, first of all, the threat of new entrants. How common is it to have a new entrant into the industry space? What are the threat of substitutes? If you're a big player in an industry, what are the threat of those substitutes? Are there a lot of low-cost alternatives out there? If so, then that industry is probably not as appealing to you, and you don't have as much power within that industry. There's also the bargaining power of buyers. If your customers have more power and have the negotiating leverage, that's not appealing to you, obviously, as an industry player. The bargaining power of suppliers, of the people providing you with goods and services to run your business. If they have the pricing power and negotiating leverage over you, then obviously that's not appealing either. And then finally, how much rivalry is there among existing competitors? And this is a very useful model to analyze the ERP software space, because what I want to demonstrate to you is that this Five Forces model heavily favors software vendors. And I'm also going to show you how it's actually hurting customers of the software vendors long term. So let's start with the vendor side of the equation. I'm going to write this out in green because most of these are positive things for the vendor. So I'm looking at this from a software vendor perspective. The first is vendor lock. Now, a lot of us have heard about vendor lock, and generally when I talk about vendor lock, I don't consider that a good thing from a customer perspective, but from a software vendor perspective, this is ideal. And what we're seeing in the cloud space is that the software vendors are creating vendor lock. By creating these cloud solutions with long-term contracts and subscriptions and the high switching costs that come along with that, that's creating vendor lock. And this is the utopia that software vendors want to see. They want you locked in because it's favorable to them. But as I'll talk about in a moment, that is not favorable to customers. And basically what it does, this vendor lock reduces the bargaining power of the buyers or the customers. It reduces the threat of substitutes. It reduces the threat of new entrants, because even if you want to switch to a competitor of the software vendor you're using, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that. And there's also less rivalry among the different competitors in the software space. So this vendor lock concept that ERP software vendors are pursuing is a very real thing that heavily favors software vendors. The other thing the software vendors are doing to shift this model in their favor is they're limiting third-party support options. And what this means is that companies like SAP, and SAP is probably the most notorious for this, they're making it difficult and very unattractive for their own customers to go get third-party support from companies like Rimini Street or Spinnaker Support. And the reason for that is because if they can limit your ability to go get third-party support, it shifts this power in the industry to them. They can now dictate to you that you will move off ECC or off the legacy system you might be using onto their newer flagship product. In the case of SAP, it's S/4HANA, or Cloud ERP as it's more recently called. So limiting third-party support shifts the industry dynamics in favor of software vendors, and that actually harms customers as well. This whole rush to the cloud and moving everyone to one single monolithic model in the cloud, especially when we're talking about public cloud, means that there's less options and less substitutes. So your buyers here, your customers, have less options, which again, looking at it through the lens of Five Forces, means that's a positive thing for software vendors, not so good for customers. By having these cloud options where you're locked in to a certain solution for years to come, and combining that with the high switching costs that I talked about before, this means that vendors have pricing power. And many of them are starting to exercise this pricing power by inflating and increasing their cloud subscription costs over time. There's a recent article and a recent controversy involving Microsoft, where they recently imposed, I think, a 10 to 20% year-over-year increase for some of their cloud subscribers. So the software vendors love this model because they have pricing power. What are your options as a customer? If they decide to raise the price, it's not so easy just to go find an alternate and go put in a new cloud solution or rip out the old one. You thought ERP implementations were difficult in the past with the on-premise model. Wait till you see the switching costs and pain that go along with switching from cloud solution to cloud solution. We haven't even begun to see that pain yet, but that's something that's favoring software vendors, hurting customers. And then finally, what the software vendors are doing is they're creating higher barriers to entry. Think about it from this perspective. If you're an entrepreneur, let's say you want to start a tech company that has an ERP solution for Fortune 500 companies, you're going to run into SAP and to a lesser degree, maybe Oracle. So very high barriers to entry to create an ERP software solution. Those costs and those barriers are coming down a bit now because of AI, and development costs are coming down, but the lock that SAP, Oracle, and some of the other big vendors have on certain spaces and certain markets means that not anytime soon is a vendor going to come along and completely disrupt their dominance in their market share. Now, underlying all of this, and this isn't really captured in the five forces model, but something that's very real is money. There is a lot of money chasing all these dynamics here. I'll add euros for international audiences too. So a lot of money going into this in terms of investors driving up stock prices, rewarding software vendors for their ability to do these things. The software vendors that are doing the best are the ones that are doing the best job of migrating customers to the cloud, the ones that are getting their customers locked in, the ones that are getting them tied down to long-term subscription costs, and ones that have created high switching costs to where that is a safe investment for investors. So investors love this, which further fuels this entire machine. So let's shift gears, though, and talk about some of the ways that this model is harming customers at the same time it's helping software vendors. So what does this mean for customers? I already alluded to some of this, but number one, less choices. You don't have as many choices as a result of some of these industry dynamics, although I will say there are a lot of choices. You just may feel like there's not a lot of choices because the vendors are doing a pretty good job of locking in a large share of the customer base into their unappealing contracts and costs. Less pricing or negotiating power. So customers don't have as much pricing power as they once had. Have you ever tried to negotiate with SAP or Oracle or even Microsoft Dynamics? It's almost impossible unless you're a huge, huge company. And even then, it's difficult. If you're a $1 or $2 billion company and you feel like you're a pretty large player in your industry, but you're trying to negotiate with SAP and negotiate ways around some of this, good luck with that because it's very difficult to do because of some of these dynamics. And these dynamics are making it even harder to negotiate with some of these software vendors, which is why it's leading to some of the higher costs that customers are already starting to feel. All these dynamics I mentioned over here make switching costs very high. And this might be the most understated one, the one that's most underappreciated, because think about the cloud movement, the cloud wave we're in right now. It's been going on for maybe 10 years now. We probably have another, let's say 10 more years before we really start to see the next wave of companies that have outgrown those systems or those systems have become obsolete. And they are going to have to decide if they want to switch to a new system, which is going to be extremely painful, extremely risky, extremely costly. And we haven't even begun to see this pain yet, but this is on the horizon in the not too distant future for customers because of all these dynamics over here. The other thing this does that isn't really captured in the lens of these five forces, but it is really important, and it's one that I have yet to hear anyone really talk about in a meaningful way in the industry, and that is a lack of intellectual property. So what I mean by reduced intellectual property and lessened competitive advantage is that software vendors are moving customers not only to the cloud, but they're trying to get them into a multi-tenant public cloud situation. But what that means is you have a lot less flexibility in those models because vendors can scale the best when you change their software the least. And by changing the software the least, that means you become just like everyone else that's using that software. Yes, you have some flexibility. You can configure it, personalize it a bit. But compared to the old on-premise model, you do not have the flexibility you once had. Now, software vendors will say, well, that's a good thing because that's all technical debt. You want a clean core. You want to just follow best practices. That's just a load of garbage that was invented by software vendors. What it's actually doing is actually diluting any competitive advantage you might have had in your systems. Think about the most successful organizations in the world, the ones that have become the most powerful, dominant players in their industry. I assure you, they did not do it by implementing a public cloud environment that anyone else has access to. In most cases, they did it by creating something unique, some secret sauce that's embedded within their technology. And sorry to break the news to the software vendors out there, those competitive advantages are not embedded in standard off-the-shelf cloud systems. Now, there might be certain parts of your business where they're commodity processes and you don't care, it's not a competitive advantage, then sure, maybe this does make sense. But when you're talking about the things that make you who you are and make you better at what you do, chances are pretty high that this is not going to satisfy that model. So therefore, if you go too far down this path and allow the software vendors to take this sort of control and dominance over the way IT is used in your organization, you are going to lose that advantage. This also comes down to less control over your own business. So Now the software vendors are telling you what best practice is. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It doesn't matter what made you successful. They somehow have the answers. And of course, I'm being facetious when I say that. They do not have the answers, but they try to convince you that you do. So you've given up a lot of your operational control. A lot of who makes you who you are is now ceded to the software vendors. And in my opinion, that's a very unhealthy thing that is not sustainable among customers. Now, if we look at this lens again through the context of your industry, not so much the software industry, but your industry, whatever industry you're playing in, what this model does is it harms you even further and makes your industry less appealing even more so, because now you've reduced barriers to entry. Because let's assume you go double down on this path of cloud, public cloud, best practice models that the software vendors are selling you. That means a competitor can come along and go buy that same software and implement the same capabilities that you took decades to build. Now suddenly you've got a whole host of new competitors potentially that you wouldn't have had in the past when you had your own IP embedded within your technology. And of course, what that does is it increases new entrants and makes for a lot more competition, which competition isn't always a bad thing. But when we take away our own competitive advantage and invite more competition when perhaps we were successful before and we were competing very well, that's not necessarily a good thing for customers. So how do we get around this? Is this the destiny that we're doomed to experience? It's not. That's the good news. And here's what you can do as an organization. So first, let's look at some of the alternatives you have. And again, this is designed to put the power back in your court, to shift some of that unhealthy dynamic that I'm talking about here, shift it from the software vendors back to your organization. The first is to pursue third-party support. If you are at risk of being decommissioned or you have an old system that the software vendor is telling you that they're not going to support it for much longer, go find third-party support. If you're using SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, any of those legacy products, or even ServiceNow, VMware, there's a whole host of them, where there's third-party support that you can get from other third-party providers that will extend your life cycle of those assets and those investments you've already made in technology. I'm not saying definitely don't upgrade your technology, but I am saying if it's not the right time, or if you don't see the competitive advantage, or you're still trying to figure out what you want to do or what you need to do, or if you want to sweat the assets you already have and get more value out of it, then do it and go find third-party support. That's one of the most effective ways to take control and power back from the software vendors. The other option is to not go all in on one vendor. So looking at best of breed and composable ERP solutions can be a good option. Now, just to preempt what a software vendor will tell you is they will say, this is a terrible idea. You should go all in with us because you want one single source of truth. You don't want to have to deal with the technical complexity of tied together multiple systems. Those days are over. That might have been relevant 20 or 30 years ago, but that's speak that worked back in Y2K. It's not working here in 2025, and here's why. The reason is because now you've got a lot more advanced integration tool sets, integration and platform as a service tools like MuleSoft and Boomi. Even the software vendors themselves, many of them have created pretty robust integration tools. Like you look at Microsoft Dynamics, for example, they've actually built a very open ecosystem that makes it easy to tie together multiple systems. And other software vendors such as Infor and QAD and others that are in that second tier of providers are providing open systems that are intentionally designed to accommodate the fact that it's not reasonable to have one system and only one system. That's what a sales rep wants to sell you, but that is not necessarily the best thing for your business. In most cases, I would argue it's not. Most organizations are going to have some level of best of breed solution to satisfy their needs. The other thing is to question the cloud. This is not cool to say. I might be the only one in the industry that will be willing to say this, but question the cloud. Is the cloud really the right thing for you? And by cloud, I guess I want to clarify a little bit here. I'm talking about multi-tenant SaaS. If you're a mid-sized, a large, complex organization, you've really got to question whether or not cloud makes sense. Because the good thing with on-prem, love it or hate it, even though it's not cool to talk about on-prem, is that you've got flexibility. You can do what you want with that system. You can create competitive advantages. You can build your own IP in that system. And that's really hard to replicate. And going back to the Five Forces model, you're making your own industry more favorable to you by potentially avoiding the cloud and going to an on-prem situation where you have built your own IP. So question the cloud. If you're a small company or it's a commodity process where you're willing to just accept vanilla processes, then sure, maybe you do go to the cloud, but I would question a full all-in doubling down of your cloud environment. And then finally, perhaps even more important or most important, is take control and ownership. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of hype, a lot of hoaxes, a lot of false information floating around in the software vendor community. It's very misleading. And at the end of the day, you've got to sift through the BS and look at what's best for your business. It's not about having the latest and greatest, shiniest new object. It's not necessarily having the minimal amount of what the industry loves to call technical debt. That term drives me crazy. It's a trigger for me. So if you ever want to trigger me, use that word in front of me. Technical debt is a made-up term by the industry. It makes it sound as though it's bad, and anything you have that is old is bad. It's not bad. You could have the same system for 10 or 20 years and might be doing a fine job. And sure, there might be something newer and better out there, but you've got to ask yourself, is it worth the cost, the time, and the risk that you're about to take on to do that? So take control and ownership, go at your tempo, manage the vendor, don't go all in with one vendor, and do these things, and you're going to create an industry dynamic that takes the advantage from software vendors and puts it back squarely in your core, which is where it should have been all along. So that's a video from my YouTube channel where I recently analyzed the ERP software industry and compared it to what the impact is on ERP customers. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think. What are you seeing in the industry? What do you think the trends are? Do you agree or disagree with what my analysis shows? Do you think there's other things that customers can be doing to tilt the advantage back to you? Love to hear your feedback on that. But that was a really fun video to put together because it's something that's been rattling around in my head for a couple of years now. And I don't know why, but I recently came across that model, that Michael Porter Industry 5 Forces model is a model that I studied when I was getting my master's degree. And recently I came across it in some other article I was reading, and it just sort of came together in my head that, hey, here's a way that I could explain the things that are rattling around in my head. So I'd love to hear from you on what you think these trends mean and how customers can regain or maintain control of their tech environment and their overall digital transformation initiative. So drop your thoughts in the comments, and we'll unpack those and discuss those on a future episode. So that's what we've got for you today. Episode 255, the first episode of 2026. Hope you enjoyed it. We've got a great year planned for you. This is our sixth full year of doing this podcast. We started the podcast January of 2021. So it's been exactly, I guess that's 5 years. I should probably check my math. So it's been 5 full years, starting our 6th full year here now this month. So if you want to watch any of the past episodes we've done, go back to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can see all 255 past episodes, and you can keep an eye on that same website for future episodes as well. You can also subscribe to the podcast on that website. So hope you all have a great week. Hope your 2026 is off to a great start so far, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.